Okay, here's the deal. If you're a fan of this channel, number one, I'm sorry. But number two, you're probably no stranger to headaches, because I don't have the most soothing cadence around, okay? That being said, you're probably pretty familiar with Tylenol, maybe even Advil, or ibuprofen. I'm gonna come right out and say it, I am a huge fan of painkillers. Not in that way, not in an illegal way, okay? I mean over-the-counter painkillers. Tension headache, optical migraine, my shins hurt for no reason, I sleep like some kind of strange contorted origami creature, terrible, debilitating period cramps. I'm always using painkillers, dude. So the thought of these painkillers being absolutely poison is terrifying. I know in the media we've got a lot of schlack recently for Tylenol being some kind of autism-inducing agent.
Nothing bad can happen, it can only good happen. But with Tylenol, don't take it.
And I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about the original Tylenol scare, which was the Tylenol murders of the 1980s. In September of 1982, something that was supposed to be extremely safe turned into a lethal kill tool. It flipped the scripts in our entire country's trust on over-the-counter medication. This is the story of the Tylenol murders, the horror that still haunts the checkout aisle and completely revolutionized the way that we package over-the-counter medication. Where comfort should have been, cyanide was found. I know that the Tylenol murders have recently become more popularized because of the Netflix documentary, which I haven't watched yet, but I actually learned about this scenario in my freshman year mass media class of college. This story absolutely infuriates me because while we do have a pretty good idea of who the culprit was, he was never officially caught. On September 28th or 29th of 1982, in the Chicago area of the United States, a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman took a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol and within a few hours was pronounced dead. Soon after, in the Chicago area, 6 more people died. They were all different ages, genders, and backgrounds, but the only thing that had connected them was a few hours before death, they had all taken Tylenol. After the autopsies were performed, it was concluded that the cause of death was because those supposed Tylenol capsules were actually potassium cyanide. It's deadly, fast, and nearly anonymous, which is terrifying. And speaking of terrifying, it was especially terrifying because whoever was doing this wasn't just targeting one person. They weren't trying to particularly put a hit out on one poor soul individually. They were just tampering medicine for the fun of it. They targeted all of the Tylenol. Your Tylenol, my Tylenol, the Tylenol on the shelf. This not only is a huge breach of security, but also a huge question. Why? What would prompt a person to poison potentially hundreds of people with seemingly no motive? The news soon spread like wildfire, and shops were emptying the shelves of their medications. People threw out all of their Tylenol and ibuprofen at their houses. Manufacturer Johnson & Johnson pulled over 31 million bottles of the acetaminophen off of the shelves, which is crazy. But what else do you do in that situation? People who had Tylenol at home, potentially even new bottles, were looking at their medicine cabinet wondering if they took a pill if they would get better or much worse. And that's a guessing game that nobody really wanted to play. So your immediate reaction is to say, how would a pill of cyanide get put into a pill of regular painkillers? Well, your knee-jerk reaction is to think, well, it must have been in the factory since, you know, painkiller bottles come with that cool little seal on the top. But I'm about to blow your mind. If you're Gen Z, apparently the seal tops on medication bottles were implemented after this scenario. I'm sorry, this is what makes the whole situation bonkers to me. I mean, we put tamper lids on almost everything. Apparently, in the United States, requiring food and drugs to have an anti-tampering seal wasn't required until 1989 and was prompted by the 1982 cyanide murders. As someone with food allergies, and I know you guys are gonna say food allergies weren't a thing in the 80s, but I'm just gonna throw this out there. This feels like common sense. I feel like the anti-tampering packaging on like orange juice and medication and pills, it keeps moisture from getting in the bottle, it keeps things fresher longer, it keeps things from spilling. I just think it's a good idea. The fact that everyone in the 1980s was freaking raw dogging all of their food and drugs and just cracking open like whatever and it being right there, unsealed, is crazy. Obviously, I want to say that my heart goes out to the families of these victims who were affected by this, because this is probably one of the most unjust situations I can think of, but it is sad that we had to go through such tragedy to implement such common sense into how we consume our food and drugs. Again, I hate to bring up other tragedies, but like, it's like when you watch like an old sitcom from the 80s or 90s before 9/11 and you can just walk up to any airport terminal without going through security. Why? Why were we ever doing that? It's hard to have the insight and perspective of a pre-safety check world when you're living in a world that hasn't experienced some kind of life-changing scenario that causes the government to implement these kinds of rules and regulations. Getting back to the story, there were no tamper seals, so that was causing all the problems. So it was a total gamble where these cyanide pills came from, whether it was someone within the company, at the factory, or somebody in the stores. Investigators were scrambling. Bottles were traced back to the manufacturing plant, and 2 of the bottles that were involved in the murders were tested. One bottle was from a manufacturing plant in Pennsylvania, while the other came from a manufacturing plant in Texas. Whoever was putting the cyanide in the pills was doing it in the store on the shelves. One of the main persons of interest at the time was named Roger Arnold, who reportedly purchased large quantities of cyanide and had lab equipment inside his home, which is very suspicious, but after testing all of the bottles, the DNA was not a match. And I just want to say, I hope that guy went on some kind of watch list after that, because he may have been let off the hook this time, but he still was using lab equipment and cyanide for something, and I don't think we should just let that go. Like, what happened to that guy? That's when the FBI began gathering information and found their prime suspect, a man named James W. Lewis. And I'm immediately thinking, what would cause you to become a suspect in such a crime? What do you gotta do to put a target on your back to where the police would think that you're putting cyanide in pill bottles? Well, I'll tell you exactly what. James W. Lewis sent an extortion letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to, quote, stop the killings. He was convicted of extortion, but never murder, and again, the DNA tests on the bottles didn't match any of James W. Lewis's DNA match which he provided. Both of these men were accused of being the Tylenol murderer because of the fact that there was no traditional police sketch of the culprit. Police built their sketch based on a very low-quality security cam footage. The photograph shows victim Paula Prince buying a contaminated Tylenol bottle and a mysterious bearded man with the classic 1980s Jeffrey Dahmer-style aviator glasses skulking in the background. But the thing is, this doesn't necessarily prove that that man skulking in the background was the culprit. In fact, since there were multiple bottles of Tylenol affected, this was most likely done before Paula Prince purchased the medication. I'm not saying that James W. Lewis is innocent, because many people believe that he is the culprit just because of the fact that he is the prime suspect of this crime, and has been for like 30 years. And I understand the sanctity of innocent until proven guilty, but it makes you wonder what would cause someone to write an extortion letter to end the killings to a company who very clearly doesn't want the killings to be happening in the first place. In all fairness of the police team who were working on this case, that is extremely suspicious in my opinion. At that point, it does seem like a setup, okay? Put poison in Tylenol bottles, ransom out Tylenol saying stop the killings, you owe me $1 million, get rich quick. I'm not saying it's a perfect plan, I'm not saying that it's very well thought out, but it does seem like a pretty decent fit. And if James W. Lewis is innocent, that would mean he just decided to like speed run his own lawsuit. Hey, don't sell poison, give me $1 million. That doesn't make any sense. To this day, the official cyanide Tylenol killer hasn't been captured because the DNA match that they have from the Tylenol bottles doesn't match any of the suspects. And like I said earlier, there's a good chance that the man in the surveillance footage wasn't even affiliated with the murders. And then the police sketches that they came up with from this one low-quality photo were even more ambiguous than the photo itself. I mean, they showed him pretty much looking like anything. To this day, the killers of Mary Kellerman, Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Mary Rayner has not been found, which is disgusting. The reason we are still talking about the Tylenol murders 30 years after it happened is because the overall cruelness and obtuseness of the case. The killer was never caught, and it seemed like his victims were completely random. Most serial killers or attempted serial killers at least want some kind of trophy or satisfaction of knowing who they killed and why. But what makes this case extremely upsetting is that they did nothing to so-called wrong this killer, because he didn't even know who his victims were going to be until after the murders already took place. And there are some theories that haven't been explored that might have some merit to them, that could explain how the randomness of the cyanide killer maybe wasn't random at all. There is a theory that I find very interesting that the cyanide murders were completed by one of the employees at the drugstore where they were purchased. Someone to access shelves and distribution channels, knowing when it would be busy or not busy in order to avoid suspicion on the security cameras, and overall just being so fed up with their job, maybe even particularly in the pharmaceutical department, that they just decided to incite chaos and tragedy upon the Chicago area. And while this is definitely no excuse and still utterly despicable, I think it is a theory that is overlooked much too often. I think the chances of it being someone connected and having a personal vendetta against the pharmaceuticals or the people of Chicago or the patrons of the store is much more likely than it just being a random patron of the store itself. Let this video be a reminder to you that the next time you purchase any kind of food, drug, vitamin, supplement, anything you are going to be putting in your body, ingesting, whatever it may be, if the tamper seal is broken, it's safer just to throw it away. My name is Melody, and on my channel I do little bite-sized deep dives onto all things creepy, geeky, and spooky, whether that be unsolved mysteries, urban legends, cryptids, weird and dark history. If any of that sounds like it interests you, I would really appreciate it if you checked out my channel. If you like this video, leave me a comment down below. Until next time, I'll catch you in the next one.